This is the Troutbitten Podcast.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout.
Wild trout. This is Troutbitten.
This is the Troutbitten Podcast, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swantowski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of Troutbitten.com. So most things don't turn out the way you had them planned. That's life. But as you're driving down the dirt road towards your favorite trout water, thoughts and plans unfold in your mind. And while preparing for a destination trip, you expect success. Once you're finally traveling halfway across the country to that river you've wanted to fish for decades, visions of the trout you'll catch kind of take over. Your hopes and dreams of what will end up in the net are a primary motivator. And aside from the fish, you might even be enthusiastic about a new fly rod, a new pair of waders, or maybe an experimental leader that you tied up. For all of this, and for the fishing itself, we expect success. We assume the positive. I really don't think many anglers leave the house thinking, well, this is probably going to suck, but I'll go do it anyway. Because as my friend Rich Alsippi loved to say, the fisherman is eternally hopeful. Think about it. That's the truth. Good anglers are optimists. Why? Because fishing is filled with so much failure that anyone who stays in the game learns to look on the bright side, to see beyond the fish count, to get past tangled tippet, broken reels, lost flies in a tree, and soaking wet clothes from falling in again. So things go bad out there. A trout river forces you into mistakes. So having good systems for how you manage gear, how you approach the water, and even what clothes you wear in certain weather all helps to minimize the disasters that befall every angler. And I mean it. Those kinds of disasters happen. And in some ways, we can avoid them. But the most common difficulty we encounter out there is one that we can't really avoid. Sometimes, trout don't want to eat. The fishing is just tough. So you try everything you planned for. You know what should work, and you fished it. But when it doesn't work, what do? That's what we're here to talk about tonight. How do you handle the tough days? How can you turn it around and start catching fish? And let's assume that's the goal, right? I mean, another way to deal with slow fishing is to grab a beer at the tailgate or find a sunny patch on the grass with a nice log and have a good bank sit. That's great too. And that might help you regroup, refocus, and remember the good things in life that come along with a day of fishing outside of shaking hands with a trout. But every angler wants to catch them. That's why we're out there. So when the going gets tough, how do we fix it? What are the strategies? I have my full crew of fishing buddies with me here tonight, and let's introduce them by answering a listener question. Austin Dando, you want to read this one, please?
Absolutely. This one comes from Luke Anston from Connecticut. Hey now, Troutbitten crew.
Hey now, Luke.
Thanks for everything you guys do. I'm 29, just got settled into a new job, and I have enough time and some money to get into fly fishing. I'm mostly fishing for trout, and I've learned a lot about the options of the fly rod by following the stuff Troutbitten puts out. Love your approach to versatility. It makes sense. And every day I'm fishing, I look for chances to change between the different fly types, or streamer, wet flies, nymphs, and dry flies. Here's my question. I've heard you guys talk about fly rods before when you've covered different methods. But if each of you can choose just one rod to fish all year long, which is it right now? Thanks again for Troutbitten. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, Luke, that's a very common question. I mean, in my email inbox, 5, 6, 8, 10 times a week. It's what rod? I have a couple articles on that, but none of us want to be forced into just one rod. What do you think? Who wants to go? What do you have? Here's Trevor Smith right there.
Yeah. Hey.
Doctor's in.
So I have a Thomas and Thomas 3-weight 10-foot, and I think I'd go with that. I mean, I've fished either a 10-foot 3-weight or a 10-foot 4-weight for the past 4 or 5 years, almost exclusively when it comes to that desire for versatility. And we have a lot of smaller water around here that I get to fish a lot more often than I do some of the bigger waterways that exist in Pennsylvania. So I really do like that 10-3. It's a pretty fast actioned 3-weight. So if it was any weaker in action or any slower, I would want it to be a 4-weight, I think. But it acts a lot like the 10-4 Hardy in terms of its action. And so,
did you say it's the contact too?
It's the contact too. Yeah. Sorry.
That was a little stiffer, isn't it?
It is. It's a little,
Than the one?
I would say it's a little bit like a faster action than the contact one was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the contact 2 in a 4-weight 10.5 foot. I didn't like that as much as I like the 10-3.
Joe Goodspeed was on the Cortland podcast. I think it was this week. That's when I was listening to it. And he was talking about the differences between the contact 1 and the contact 2. He said the contact 1 broke a lot.
Interesting. I did break mine twice, but
It's a little stiffer. Did you? The 1 or the 2?
yeah, but I mean, in fairness, I think any rod would have broke with
You
what I
did
did
something
with it.
dumb.
I think I watched you
I
break it.
fell in the dark. Did you watch?
Cardor
Yeah.
versus Rod didn't win.
No, it was a fall in the dark onto I just sheared.
I watched that
I
happen.
sheared it off right above the handle. I went down with all my weight on it was a bad break.
All right, so we know you're not using that rod for night fishing though, right? It'd be tough to be locked into just one rod.
That's what I was going to say is
No,
Go
yeah,
ahead,
you're
Josh.
if we're saying across the
Right.
whole year.
Josh
I mean,
Darling, here you
yeah.
go.
Hi. If we're saying across the whole year, then I'd probably do like a 9.5 foot 5-weight. And I don't really care who makes it, honestly. If it's any
Within
of the-
reason.
Yeah,
What if I give you a moonshine?
maybe not a moonshine.
How about a fiberglass?
No, but any higher end rod that's gonna be built well, I think is probably gonna be okay for me. I've not necessarily had the opportunity to try out every rod out there, and so I fish with what I've gotten, and it works. But in terms of weight and length, if I'm gonna include the night fishing part of the year in this as well, then I'm certainly gonna go 5-weight and a little bit shorter, 9.5, I'd say.
It's kind of a tough question.
Mm-hmm.
What Luke
Yeah.
asked.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy. I
Go
think
ahead,
it's really
Bill Dell.
easy.
Deli.
I think we're going to agree on this. Actually, 9.9 Hardy ultralight LL
Yeah.
4-weight 9.9.
It's a good rod.
I use it probably 80% of the time when I fish.
Yeah.
And
It's easy if you only day fish.
Yes.
Was that a cut?
If you're scared of the dark.
Was-
now.
Oh,
You
man.
got him.
That was
You
subtle,
catch it.
but it was there.
Shots
Yeah.
fired.
Sniper.
Catch enough fish with the lights on, you'll be content.
Hit me where it hurts.
Yeah.
I do
think
think.
it
I mean, I think the heart of his question is not to pigeonhole us into one rod. I think he really wants to know what's the most versatile. So I think, honestly, I think we should answer it as if we're
Oh,
day
stop
fishing.
giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's trying to make this hard on us.
I guess. Bill said 80% of the time I choose that rod. Well,
Right,
I think that's the answer to the question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do I choose the most? Yeah, sure. I night fish, and I don't want to fish that Hardy ultralight 9'9" 4-weight for night fishing. But like you, Bill, I'm 90% of the time on that rod. I also have the 10-foot ultralight, and honestly, I hardly see or feel a difference. They're very, very close. And actually, the 10-foot ends up in my hands more often. Actually,
They're pretty much the same. Just send one over
they
here
are
and I'll
very
give it a
similar.
try.
I actually like the grip better. I have the prototype for that 9.9, and it's a little thin.
Must be nice.
Got to be nice to be the trout bitten guy.
yeah, whatever. What about you, Austin?
I think
what's your answer?
so. His question is kind of framed as though he's just looking to start. So I'm going to give two options. If you're not sure how dedicated or how much you want to spend right away, my kind of mid-level recommendation is a 10-foot 4-weight TFO BVK, and I think that's now renamed to the Legacy. And that is a great all-around rod that has a lifetime warranty on it that you can break or not worry about busting up if you're just trying to get started, and it's not going to hurt the bank account too badly.
Nice.
Myself, I've been fishing the 10-foot 5-weight H3 for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I personally like a stiffer rod, a little bit heavier that versatility comes into effect when you can throw some larger streamers, things like that, weighted nymph rigs, big bobbers, whatever. So I like that rod.
Mm-hmm. Your left, Grobe, Matt Grobe out in Montana. What do you got? Got a trout pitting hat on. I like that.
I'll tell you what, I'm not fishing, Luke. I'm not fishing glass, and I'm not fishing bamboo.
I don't need that. Come on.
Come on.
Sorry,
Matt goes, come on. I don't need that.
Everybody send Matt a glass rod for
From
Christmas.
last week.
I'm a 10-foot 4-weight guy. Currently, I'm fishing a R.L. Winston Super, but I'm kind of with, I fished a bunch of different 10-foot 4s. I like the Helios. Really like the Sage ESN. I think it's a really good rod.
Do they make a 4-weight?
Yeah, they've a 3-weight.
Right.
I have a 3-weight and I have a 5-weight on them. But overall, 80% of the time I'm fishing a 10-4. And I like the Winston.
No kidding.
So
honestly, don't have any Winston rods. I've cast them. They're clean. They're
nice.
They're
smooth.
Yeah, real crisp. I don't know. There's 100 different ways to describe that action, but that's nice.
It's slick. Yeah,
they are quality rods.
Did you get any hate for the first? Did you get any spawn hate? Yeah,
that's a good question. No, it's only been out for a day, 24 hours, right?
Just today.
Yeah.
Last week, we talked about spawning, and we said we like to fish during the spawn, not over spawning fish, but during the spawn, because of our waters, we can avoid those trout. Go back, listen to the episode, everybody. And when you put something like that out there, just the title, and even I put a question on Instagram: do you fish during the spawn? That question, that title, trout fishing in the spawn, is definitely going to have a lot of people that are going to respond without listening to the podcast or trying to understand our perspective necessarily. And I expected some of that, but haven't gotten it yet. And that's cool.
Not yet.
The results of the poll are heavy majority fish during spawn.
Yeah, 70-something to 20-something right now. That might change, obviously.
Yeah.
I think there's about 50 people that responded so far. Everybody answered, right? Everybody. So, Luke, those are our favorite rods. And we don't want to be narrowed down to just one, but those are your answers. All right, guys, let's jump into the topic. What do you do when the trout won't eat? How do you save the toughest days on the water? And we all have them. Can we acknowledge that right away? Everybody have tough days out there?
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
Yeah.
No. Dominate every day.
Come on.
He also never falls in.
No, he hasn't fallen in like 2 years. He's a superstar. No, I mean,
I've fallen on land 3 times in the last 6 months. I don't know, fall in a stream.
The water helps catch his fall when he does stumble.
That's right.
No, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions out there is that some of these top guys, they never have these tough days. They're always catching trout. First of all, I think the term or the idea of top guys is ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Just because somebody wrote a book or because I have a website called Troutbitten doesn't mean I catch any more fish than anybody else. I just kind of know the tactics maybe more inside and out than other people, because I've had more than some other people, because I've had more time on the water. Anyway, we all have tough days. And the point is, how do you save those toughest days, right? How do you turn it around? Instead of going home and just giving up, basically, how have you turned around those unproductive times and started putting trout in the net? Let's talk about that. That's our discussion. That's our topic. What are your strategies, guys? Open discussion. Let's go.
Cover more water.
Right on. That's a good one. Deli says.
Real good one.
Elaborate.
Deli goes 40 mile an hour up the stream.
That's right.
Yeah, he already covers a lot of water.
Cherry picking.
Yeah. Wow.
That's your everyday, Bill.
Must grow wings.
If it's really bad, I'll cover more water.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times if it's bad, I'm just going to streamer fish and try to at least figure out even if I move a couple fish, then I might learn what water type they're in. And if I'm throwing streamers and I'm moving, I don't know, let's say I cover a half mile, 3/4 of a mile of a river or a stream that's, let's say, 20 to 30 foot wide. And after that half a mile or 3/4 of a mile, I don't see anything or don't move anything, then I might go the inverse and then find a hole and then just cycle through a bunch of flies.
I like that.
I think my first question is, why do I think it's bad? And is it because of a modifiable variable that I can answer with a technique change or a fly change? or a type of water, a water type change, or is it something that I may not have control over? You know, like, is the water warmer and the trout's metabolism are shutting down, or is the water really, really cold and their metabolism shutting down? And so even good success today might mean slow fishing, or do I think I should be having good fishing and I just need to figure out I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to differentiate between a day that I think could be good and a day that I think is just going to have to reset some expectations so that I'm not beating my head against the wall thinking I'm doing something wrong versus something that I could change.
Trevor, you're always the one, and this is a good thing, that brings up, it depends. Well, it's conditional. Well, it's nuanced.
Yeah, I know.
It is, dude. Right?
That's my job.
I could go fish
It's real life.
a piece of water that I haven't fished for 10 years. I mean, let's say I've never fished.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Maybe it's marginal water, not listed as Class A, maybe not even listed as natural reproduction on our Pennsylvania Fish Commission website. And I might go fish it. Why not? Right? And then my expectations are going to be real low.
Yeah.
And I could go, well, that's why I'm not catching fish. There's hardly any in here. But then again, if I go fish the river that's down the hill from my house, and it's cloudy and the water temps are great right now, and there's water in the river, like, come on. Why am I not catching fish right now?
Exactly.
Right? Those are two very different things. That's
super
cool
different.
to point that out.
Yeah.
Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected Citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer. For over a decade, Smith Creek's high-quality fly fishing accessories have helped anglers just like you to keep your gear in easy reach, free up your hands, and keep our waters clean. Their award-winning Rod Clip Plus now has 2 ways to attach it to your vest or pack, making it easier to tie a fly, change a hook, or release your catch. All Smith Creek products are built guide tough, using rugged materials and backed by their strong commitment to customer service. This fall, Smith Creek is introducing even more new products, so keep checking their website at smithcreek.co for more information and special offers from now through Christmas.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I mostly agree with Dell. Yeah, I think earlier in on the day, if it's like beginning of the day and it feels like, all right, we've got low light conditions, it should be good, kind of like what you were describing, Dom, then I'm more likely to like cycle through flies, cycle through water types in the area, and fish certain places harder, cycle through techniques, try streamers, try dries, hit the banks, all that stuff. But if we're talking about like it's been an hour and a half, I've not caught anything, and the conditions are good, then I pretty much switch into entirely, I'm going to move, and that's going to be what I do. And I'm going to have 2 confidence flies on, I'm going to have a big one on, and I'm going to have a tiny one on to cover my bases, and I'm just going to move. And the big thing is because I feel like you never really know, like if all the conditions are good, then you don't really know what the reason is for why the fish aren't biting. And it could be as simple as like somebody was fishing before you.
Sure,
you know,
good point.
And maybe whether that's that day or the night before, whatever it is, and you don't know when they got out. So relocating could be everything, because all of a sudden you're fishing fish that they were fishing for, and then you're fishing fish that they weren't fishing for 10 feet up, you know? And so you just don't know. I feel like every bit of movement, whether it's a different water type or just a different bend, different level in the stream, it integrates kind of a new hope in me to keep going. But I'm big on if it's been a couple hours and nothing, then I'm going to move, and I'm going to have 2 confidence flies on, big and small.
I think hope is a really big deal there, Josh. When days are slow, outside of the days like Trevor mentioned, where maybe it's just some extreme environmental condition, I choose to believe that the fish are eating something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe they aren't, but in my mind, I have to believe that I could stumble upon the one thing that's going to turn it on.
Right.
So being able to think that way, because if you go for hours and you catch no fish, it's really easy to get sloppy and start giving bad presentations.
True.
And that just compounds throughout the day. So having hope and having a reason, and changing to kind of spur that hope further along really makes an angler durable through those slow times.
Durable.
Yeah. And I found
that.
for me that, and I think it is all playing into like, what am I going to have confidence in? What am I going to have hope in? Is I found that for me, moving increases that more than changing flies does, almost always.
Yeah.
So that's usually my go-to.
Nice.
But I think it'd be awesome if you could find the same amount of hope in making small changes to flies and such.
Like brown versus
Yeah,
dark
exactly.
green.
Yeah,
I know.
doesn't
Like
make a
that
difference.
doesn't play into me
Right.
as much either.
Yeah.
But yeah, good point.
Halloween mop.
They were on dark olive.
the trick.
Oh, it's Halloween mop time, huh?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I do sometimes go like oddball when it's slow, and I've had success doing that sometimes where the conventional tactics or conventional flies, I should say, aren't working to the level that I think they should be given the conditions, and sometimes going bright orange or going beadless on my nymphs, or you know, just kind of pushing my extremes one way or another. Supernatural or very natural or really gaudy and kind of outlandish.
I want a supernatural
Sometimes.
fly.
Yeah, supernatural.
Superfly.
The Troutbitten Superfly.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Superfly.
yeah, sometimes it just really seems to be the ticket to just change things up quite a bit. And I don't know whether that's because fish are maybe in some sections, some rivers, they're just accustomed, educated. And Dom, you and I have talked about the year that they ran some competition fly angling on one of our local rivers and how we saw a change in the types of flies that fish were willing to take in that river. And I just wonder that sometimes, if that's why changing the fly type so dramatically can sometimes make a difference.
It's almost cryptic, so I'll say like they're eating beads less. There's no doubt in my
Sure.
mind.
Yeah.
They're eating bright
Right.
beads less. That's the first time I ever saw that, and Trevor and I have talked about it. Right after they had a competition, you know, guys were like on the water for basically 3 days, and on the same beats of water, the same pieces of water for 3 days. Everybody using copper, silver, and gold beads. And I mean it. Right after that, you know, I went and fished it, and it's not like they wouldn't eat it, but it was way better when I got away from beads. And that's like 3 or 4 years ago, the first time I experienced that on this water we're talking about.
Yep.
And now, Austin, you brought it up when we talked about what has changed in fly fishing a couple weeks ago. You said like everybody's out there nymphing with, you know, tight line tactics. And what goes along with that, if you're Euro nymphing, you know, you're not adding weight to the leader, so you're fishing beads. And once again, sure, there are black beads, and now I think it's kind of neat. You have these matte colored beads. They're like dull grays and browns and olives, and that's cool, and speckled black, and you know what I'm saying? That's neat.
Yeah.
But let's say most people are fishing the bright beads, and there is no doubt in my mind anymore that they are shying away from beads, not just once in a while, but a lot of time.
Pretty soon the dead drift's going to be dead. We're going to have to drag it across all lanes.
That's right.
Oh no, they see a lot of that.
Yeah,
Austin
you're right.
said this
You're
not
right.
too long ago either. Like the old school patterns are going to come back around.
Yeah.
Right? That's where I am. And I've been on the water, I think, the last 3 days, and 3 different waters. But each one of them, I spent some time just fishing what I call fur nymphs. You can call them waltz worms, but there's some crest bugs and this and that. Just fur on a hook.
Beadless.
Beadless, yes. And I use split shot above at 5. I don't drop shot. Well, I could, but I haven't been. Point is, just fur on a hook. Different kinds of fur. Sometimes a little bit of flash in there, a little bit of antron, this and that. And like you said, Austin, I mean, the old school patterns are going to come back. When everybody's fishing one thing, they actually are changing what trout eat. Well, then you got to do the opposite. We talked about this, season 7, I think. Beginning, we had two podcasts on angler pressure, what it does to the fish and what it does to the fishing. And I will say, like, just 8 or 9 months ago, I was still very skeptical of like, these rivers don't get that much pressure. And now I'm telling you, man, by going away from beads and just going to fur, a lot of times that's making a big difference for me.
And that makes sense. I think we could expect that the trout would react in a way that, brings them safety.
But that goes along with what you're saying there, Trevor. Like, do the extremes. And I don't know if it's extreme to just not fish a bead, but that's something you could do to your rig that is radically going to change how the flies drift even and what they look like.
Yeah.
Fish the extremes. I like that concept for solving this problem.
I like it.
So when you talk about going without beads, are you going both the bottom fly and the tag fly? Like, do you think if you were to go with a bottom fly that had a bright bead on it and the top fly didn't have a bead, do you think that bottom fly would almost spook the fish away from the top fly?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do, Bill. And when I do this, the fur nymph thing, I keep it pure, so to speak. Every once in a while on the top fly, I'll put like a silver bead, like a 2 millimeter silver bead, whatever, copper or silver bead, a bright one. And it's really small. But I say every once in a while, because really what I start out, if I'm thinking like, let's switch to fur nymphs, I'm talking just 2 or just 1. Fur nymph, a little bit of split shot. It doesn't have to be heavy split shot. Often it's lighter than the flies were. You get my point. That's what changes. But yeah, I do think, Bill, like, why not keep it pure? Yeah. I mean, if it's 20 inches away, that could definitely change what I think is going to make a difference. I want to keep it pure.
Makes sense.
Man, yeah, I agree with mostly with what everybody said. I think I apply all those tactics when the going gets tough at times. I do think we can get carried away with the move quick and with general patterns personally, especially during the height of the hatch season. And I'll just kind of go past experience the last couple years. I think understanding the emerging insects and what's about to emerge in your watershed can be critically important in kind of cracking the code when things can get tough, right? And yeah, you can move quick with the general patterns and you're probably going to do okay. But I think there's also an opportunity there to understand that just because, you might have a blanket full river of sulfur duns, right, doesn't mean the fish aren't keying in on I'm trying to think like a slate drake nymph. You know what I mean?
Why not a pseudo Cleon though, Matt?
Well,
let's use that as an example.
That's too easy. I know they're the only thing. They're the only thing hatching, so that's
drake.
Not hard to crack. But I think that's changed that's changed days for me where big salmon flies are hatching and I'm fishing a soft hackle under the surface because they're hitting emerging caddisflies. And the easiest thing to do is to throw on the big bug, or so if you really dig deep, I think you can crack some codes at times when fishing's tough. And the other thing is the depth that you're targeting these fish, especially in the summer months and the spring. Right. You can vary that dropper or put an emerger on, and you'd be shocked at sometimes what that can do to your success rate.
Even if you're changing the depth of where you're fishing the streamer. Often,
right.
I'm trying to keep the streamer in sight. I fall into that habit because I love seeing what I'm doing to my streamer. I like using something I could see and then keeping it higher in the water column. And that's great. That's fun. But then if I take that same streamer and get it deep enough that I can't see it, that makes a big difference.
Right.
I like what you're saying there, dude, like cracking a code. There is a code. And what Austin, you said about always having hope.
Yeah, right.
And to me, I say never blame the fish. It's not the fish's fault. It's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, you get those days where nothing seems to work. There probably was something that you missed, but like there's a code. I'm with you.
Sure.
Be observant.
What would you say percentage wise when we talk about this? Right? Are we confident saying 365 days a year, all of us fish for the most part? 65% of the time or 70% of the time, you can get away with some very strong general confidence patterns and do fairly well.
Yeah,
I think it's less than that.
I feel like it's more than that.
More than that?
If you find the right size, right? I mean, if I fish a waltz, for example, beaded or unbeaded, or if you fish a pheasant tail, beaded or unbeaded,
right?
Come on, I mean, if you find the right size, that looks like a slate drake, it looks like a sulfur. Hell, it could even look like a stonefly, I suppose, if it was big enough. You might be missing a few appendages, but it could convince some trout. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's like 80 or 90%. I can get away with this confidence general.
Yeah. I think that matches up with what biologists see when they look at the overall percentage of a trout's diet that is different types of like small invertebrates, versus vertebrates or whatever. And as I do think as fish get bigger, there's obviously a changeover. We talked about this in the past, like from strictly invertebrates to like pescatarian or kind of eating more. Yeah, they get more cannibalistic, right, as they get bigger, brown trout. But
very cartilaginous.
Very
cartilaginous. But brown trout,
a lot of cartilaginous.
Among the normal range that we're catching.
They still like pseudos.
Yeah, right. 96% of what they're eating is small and brown or small and gray.
Yeah, right.
And so if
everything looks like a pheasant tail.
Right. And so it's just implausible to think that you could ever not have success if you're presenting a fly appropriately at the right size, like you mentioned, and removing the variable potentially of bead to unbead. So like maybe within a certain set of variables, if you can work within that set of variables, you can find success on almost every day. But I don't know.
But like Matt's saying too, I mean, if they're eating one thing, especially on top, on top, and maybe I say that just because we can see it, we can see that success on top, and you can go, well, I got a damn good drift. I'll change the fly. I got a good drift. There's a rising trout. I'm getting a good drift over him. I'll change the fly. And yeah, by getting something that sits real low and maybe even more in the water than on top of the water, emerger concept, it changes something, and all of a sudden the trout eats. I mean, that's what you're saying, Matt. Like you can crack that code.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's cool.
I think you kind of have to know your river. If you are fishing a river that has a ton of insects and different hatches, I think that's when something like Matt's talking about, like really knowing the hatches, it could make a huge difference where they're keying in on that one insect that's, the nymphs are active, but you don't see anything, but underneath the surface, they're moving around. And so there's not many of those river systems that I fish, but there's a few of them that they really key into certain bugs.
Yeah. When you guys are fishing fast, both you and Josh said that you like to fish fast then. Well, when the action slows down, you're saying you'll go fast. Like when you move fast then, what are you looking for? Are you looking for productive water? I mean, a productive water type. Like, oh, they're sitting in the riffles. Oh, I finally figured it out. They're in deep, shady areas. Or are you just looking for hungry patches of trout?
Both. I guess when I fish fast, I'm still fishing all the water types because I don't know what water type they're in. So instead of making 40 good casts into one run, I'm making like 5 to 10, maybe not like even that. But I'm basically, think of it when you're playing Contra and you got spreader, right? And so
with or without the cheat code.
With the cheat code.
Okay, good. You make it all the way through. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, you're covering everything, from bank to bank. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I agree. It's just less casts. It's like you stop, you make 5 casts, you move on.
Mm-hmm. If you're not a good wader, if you're not good at covering water, if you're uncomfortable in the water, boy, that's not a good strategy then, right? Because all you're doing is walking and setting up and making a cast.
Scaring everything.
And getting out. Yeah. And when you do get hung up, I've seen that in the last couple of weeks while I'm guiding. I just am once again reminded that people are very much slowed down by the inefficiencies of waiting. And like when I get hung, if I'm nymphing and I get hung up, I don't care. I'm like, I don't even stand there and go bang, bang, I'm pulling back. Oh, I hope it comes out. It's not going to come out, right? I changed the angle. And so I wade 3 steps toward it, usually get to rod tip on the other side, pop it out. And that's not a big deal to me or to you guys. Same thing, kind of the same thing with the streamer. I'm not, it's not a big deal. I don't care. I hardly care. I'm like, that's too bad. And then whatever. It's a reason to move. It's just another reason to move.
Yeah.
And I got whatever. I got a waiting staff and I'm just popping over to wherever I want to be. I can almost wade anywhere I want to go. And you guys are the same way. But if you don't have that facility and you're not set up to do that, then you can't fish fast. That's not a good strategy then when things are slow, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Another thing I like to think about, since we're on the topic of speed, not necessarily wading speed, but drift speed. And that correlates with water types often, of course. But some days I feel like slowing down your presentation can affect a change in success. So if I'm fishing, let's say a walking pace run that's 2.5 feet deep, and my flies are moving slightly slower than the surface of the water, kind of riding that sweet zone in the strike zone there. Still not getting eats. Feel like the presentations are clean. Feel like my flies are, good confidence flies. The next thing I may do is change the angle of my sighter or add weight to my system and try to slow those flies down even more.
Yeah.
Slow them down. And then maybe I'll do the opposite. I'll try to lead them faster. Maybe even animate the flies a little bit if they're nymphs. Maybe a twitch of the rod tip up and down, slight animations, subtle changes like that. I think I've definitely found success in.
I like that.
Yeah, it's
Me
good.
too. When I'm nymphing, that's the main thing, Austin. If I'm nymphing, the action's slow, and I want to stick with it, then that's probably the main thing I'm going to do. I am going to get really stubborn about getting low and slow, because 90% of the time, that's the answer. And
Right on.
I get it. You can drift all the way through, 3 or 4 times, didn't even touch. Great. Isn't that fun? Not hanging up. Oh, isn't that great? You're not catching fish either. And if you're not, then get low, get slow, get hung up once in a while, tap, stick. Oh, well, and I'll get really stubborn about that. That's the number one thing I do, Austin. What did Sloop, you're bringing up Sloop? Sloop always said, like,
It's been a while.
he would always say, like, just get closer, get closer. Basically, I summarize it to say tighter targets, know exactly where you're going to fish. You kind of forget the stuff beside it. Pick your favorite spot. Go ahead, cherry pick. Go up the water fast. But when you get to a spot that you like, now I'm going to present, my best casts right here.
Yeah.
This is it. Pick your confidence water now.
Right.
And
They don't eat here, then
That's right.
we got a
Then
problem.
right.
Bigger
Right.
problem.
Yeah, that's right. Find water like that. I think that's good advice. As fly anglers and tires, we understand the value of having the right tool for the job. AvidMax.com offers over 20,000 products and the knowledge to help you find the right tool for your job, whether that be at the tying bench or on the water. Listeners of the Troutbitten podcast receive a special one-time discount code at avidmax.com. Enter the code TB10 at checkout on full-priced items to save 10% off your order. Orders over $25 ship for free, so you can put more gas in your tank or beer in your cooler. For all things fly fishing and tying, elevate your game with AvidMax. Precision Fly and Tackle is a family-owned business with a passion for the outdoors and a sense of adventure. They are anglers who enjoy every moment spent on the water with family and friends. Precision Fly and Tackle carries the widest selection of Euro rods, reels, lines, leaders, flies, and accessories. From the beginner to the advanced angler, Precision Fly and Tackle can outfit every angler, no matter the budget. Visit them online at precisionflyandtackle.com. Then use code TROUTBITTEN10, that's the number 10, for 10% off your order. Gear up with Precision Fly and Tackle for your next adventure.
Austin, you said this, but I was thinking even we're talking about slowing down the drift, but don't always just assume that that's like, it might be super counterintuitive, but I remember a day, like a really specific day on water over by you, Austin, and it was really tough and I could not get anything, and it didn't matter how slow or how perfect the drift was. And then finally I was like, I think it was almost accidental. It was kind of like sloppy. I was sort of like half speed leading. I went from like a 75 degree angle in the water down to like a 30. And it was sort of like almost dragging the nymphs through. And it's like, oh, fish on. And I did it again. Oh, fish on. What on earth?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't look natural, but maybe there was something different about my leader that day slightly. Something was different that was causing them to impulsively eat that when I did that.
Do you think that
I like
angle
that.
change that you just described allowed you to be in contact faster with the flies, or more of a direct line to the resistance of those flies that maybe you could have been missing strikes?
That's a great theory.
Sometimes they eat them really fast, or faster than other days. They'll hold on to them with less time than
Yeah, it
others.
felt impulsive, and so that's a good theory for that, for sure.
That's nice.
Yeah.
But that's like the opposite of low and slow. Sometimes you lead them through.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, there's a lot of complexity to the nymphing game. And it's not just about depth, how deep are they, but about speed. And yet we can be in control of that speed. As time goes on, the nymphing game takes on trends. People kind of keep doing this similar things as the next guy, right? And right now it's like, thin and lighter, basically longer drops. And man, if they're eating it on the drop, that's great. Lots of times they're not. So again, like Austin said, I'm going to get down low and get really deliberate. And that usually seals the deal. But if it doesn't, then yeah, Josh, that's cool. Like just bring it through or tap it. Yeah, whatever. Just kind of just the little mini pops, like half-inch pops, if you can do that, That's neat. I love that stuff. I guess here's one of my tips, I suppose. No matter what tactic I'm doing, whether it's a streamer or a dry or a web fly or a nymph, you need to have confidence that what you're doing now isn't working. Basically, I'm saying you want to have confidence in your tactic. You need to be able to look at it and go, I did what I wanted to do there. Okay, that didn't work.
Great point.
Yeah.
They didn't eat it. And then you just you have to believe the fish. And you got to go, all right. I'm going to change something. And I think that's sort of the heart of this whole thing. Like, what do you do when the fish won't eat? We got to change something. You're not going to keep doing the same thing. The easiest thing to change is the water. Bill and Josh said, move fast. The next easiest thing to change is the fly. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe the next easiest thing to change is go from streamers to nymphs or to dries, whatever. Right? But whatever you're changing, then give it a little bit of time. If you acknowledge this is a tough day, give it a little bit of time. And if they don't eat it, you have to just be able to look at it and go, that's it. I did what I wanted to do. Now I'm going to change again. And now I'm going to change again. You can spend you'll feel like you're spending your whole day changing, but at least you can get to the end of the day and you go, you know what? I fished well in these 10 or 11 or 12 different ways or whatever, maybe more than that. I did it well. And you can walk away going, all right, I did what I could. There's always going to be something left on the table. You don't have enough time to try everything. But I think that's what we all want to do.
Yeah.
That's what we all want to be able to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's very important. I think too, knowing one, never compare yourself to other anglers or other anglers' success.
That's
and,
good.
And know where your competencies lie. So if you're trying to learn the nymph game, you're trying to learn how to tight line, maybe they are eating excellent dead drifts that day. And that's what you're trying to do, but they're not excellent yet. It takes time to build skills and to build confidence there. So being able to recognize maybe how well you're doing something, which comes within time, is a big deal also. You can't expect to go out there every day and knock it out.
Exactly. They're tough. A lot of times they're just tough.
One of my favorite things to do when it's slow is just find a shady spot on the bank and crack a broken heels and embrace it.
I know.
You guys have all heard me say, there's no fish in there. When I'm not catching fat, there's no fish in there.
No fish in there.
And there's no fish in there.
That's right. Where's the next
No fish
spot?
in there.
No, not even where's the next spot. Yes, there's a nice shady spot on the bank over there.
They'll be eaten by the time I get back in there.
That's exactly right.
You guys have come
Give
a
'em
long
rest.
way since we were picking up Dom skunk beers in the woods and drinking them. Now you're drinking IPAs.
That's the rule. Matt, tell everybody the rule. If you find a beer
Yeah, if you find a beer unopened in the woods, you got to drink it.
in the water, in the water.
Wasn't there a day when they just kept appearing or something?
Dom and I, during the first day of rifle, there was beers in the woods and we were drinking them and people were shooting at us.
That's a good summary. That's pretty much how the day went.
Amazing.
Weren't there roosters in the parking lot?
Well, I'll tell you that back then, that was the only thing in that parking lot was roosters, right? You didn't see anybody in that place.
You never find quality beer in the river.
No, it's always Bush
I know.
Light or
Yeah.
something. That makes you cringe. But you know what? You suck it up. You crack that beer and you figure it out.
Figure it out.
You guys know I have never come across a full beer can in the river. Not once in my life.
Too bad.
Not
I bet you
once
should
in my
look.
life.
No, you can
I'm in the
buy-
double digits on that. And Matt and I have done it a couple times.
Never
That's
once.
the rule, though. You find it, Josh, you got to drink it right there. No questions.
Not by yourself.
Well, why
Like
not?
if you're fishing alone and you found a full can of beer, would you still drink it? You'd be like,
Yes,
"I ain't
that's
doing
the
this."
rule.
Rules a rule. Rules a
What's
rule.
gonna happen?
It's not a
What's wrong with you,
sometimes thing.
Austin?
What's gonna happen?
That's pretty disciplined.
It's a gift from the gods.
This is
Now I
this is
gotta
an
drink.
honor
All of a sudden,
system. It's all about
Let
your
there be
integrity.
beer.
You refocus.
It's
and
simple.
you get back on that damn water and catch your son of a.
Do you have integrity or do you not?
That's right,
Yeah.
Austin. It's like
I was hoping
self-discipline,
it was
like
more of
last
like a
week.
group tradition.
I was hoping
Because it'd be
it was.
way less fun if
No.
you're just by yourself.
Just by
If
yourself.
we ever find Dom dead, we might know where to look in the woods by an empty can of beer.
You keep saying woods, though. I'll tell you, if I find like a 6-pack, that's been there for like a
Bacon
year,
in the sun. Yeah.
right, by some pine tree, I'm like, nope, not drinking that.
Oh, come on.
Where we find them is in the water. It's usually from people on a tube or something, like kids on a
Sure.
on a tube,
There you
and
go.
it falls out. Did I ever tell you guys, Pat and I found on one of the braided sections of one of our favorite rivers, we found one of those soft pack, like 12 packs of bush. You know what I mean? Like the soft pack,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like a soft cooler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were 11 beers in a 12 pack.
Ooh. It's
Ooh.
like
Pat and I were
Christmas
like-
morning.
The rule is we're going to drink them. We drank, now seriously, we drank 2. We're like, leave the rest for the next angler.
Yeah,
We
right.
did. We
The
drank
next
2. We
day.
had a sandwich. We had an early lunch. We had like 2 beers. I was like, dude, I'm not drinking like all these beers. But we thought about it because that's the rule.
Yeah.
That's funny.
We did. We
That
left
is
the rest
awesome.
there. They hadn't been there for very long.
Changing back into our topic here.
Oh, yeah.
One other thing.
Keep us on the
we
straight and
haven't-
narrow.
Yeah,
buddy.
right. One other thing we haven't talked about, but something that I've done a couple winters in a row is use slower fishing and days that are particularly difficult, because I don't always get to pick the days that I'm out there. But if I get out there and it's just a particularly slow day in the winter, which is already potentially slower than the rest of the year, I've used that as an opportunity to work on some tactics that I don't always spend enough time on the rest of the year because I'm busy catching fish. So
That sounds like you're giving
Must
up.
be nice.
I know it does. Well, it's changing the reason that you're out there from fish catching necessarily to perfecting a skill.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I don't like that.
And then you can get to the end of the day and you can say, I was just working on tactics.
Yeah, right,
Wasn't really
exactly.
trying to catch them. Austin does that all the time.
They weren't on streamers.
You say Austin does that all the time.
Bill, I don't expect you, Mr. 280 days on the water, to get it. But seriously, I feel like with some tactics, I don't get enough days on the water working on them to get good at them. And streamers is definitely one of those areas that I've spent winters working on casting and working on feeling more comfortable just manipulating that fly in the water. And I do feel like I fished streamers during peak season a lot more this year because I had a lot more confidence in them from the time that I spent working on them in the wintertime. And I caught a lot more fish this year on streamers than I've ever caught before because I spent that time. So I felt like it was a bit of an investment in my technical skill because I wasn't able to pick the days that I was out there. I don't have enough days to work on everything I want to work on. And
Right on.
it felt like insurance on the day to be able to work on some of those tactics.
And honestly, I was joking around about it, like saying, "Well, you can say then at the end of the day, I wasn't really trying to catch fish there for the last half of the day. I was just working on this.
If I really
tactic."
wanted to.
Yeah.
Right, if I really want. Austin, how's it go?
I could have caught as many fish if I really wanted to.
Right. So you can get to the end of the day though, and you can say, I wasn't really trying to catch them.
Justifications.
But honestly, like while you're fishing, it frees you up, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, Trevor? It kind of makes you feel like, good. Like the pressure.
Totally.
You shouldn't be putting pressure on yourself anyway to catch fish, but
right on.
that's sort
It's
of
a controllable outcome. You may not
There
be
you
able
go.
to catch the
That's-
fish on command, but you can.
that's a great point.
you can get better.
I'd like to ask the question from, a guide perspective.
Mm.
Let's say you're out on the water, you have a client, they really want to learn the nymph game or whatever, a streamer presentation, and the fishing appears to be slow,
Yeah.
though you know the
Appears.
presentations aren't on point. And as a guide, you want to do everything you can to make that outcome result in a fish netted for that person.
Sure.
But sometimes I'm resistant to change because I know we haven't really gotten to that place yet.
Right.
That client may be questioning, why aren't we changing lots of stuff? And in my mind, well, they're probably on a dead drift near the bottom on a slow presentation, and we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that when you're with someone on the water?
There's 4 guides here. Matt, Bill, what do you think?
Yeah. I would do my best in explaining just that, Austin. Like, look, there's willing fish down there. We just haven't hit the right drift and the right presentation for those fish to eat. So we're going to continue to work on that before we start trying to do too many things. And I kind of harp on that at the beginning of that lesson. If you have a beginner angler, the worst thing you can do in fly fishing is to try to learn everything. Yeah. We've acknowledged that here, right? And today, this is what we're going to work on. And look, it's called fishing, not catching, right? So we're going to teach a skill, work on that skill, and hopefully, you're rewarded with that type of focus. Yeah, because it's getting people to focus. I mean, that's tough as a guy.
That's big. Good point.
Then I crawl up on the bank and crack that bush light.
Oh yeah.
I would
rusty can. I don't care.
I would change something because I think
rust. It's aluminum. Come on, Dom.
Let's say you fished for 2 hours, you didn't catch anything. I would change something drastically because with that change, the client probably then gains some confidence that, hey, we're changing something. Maybe this new tactic is going to, I don't know, it could work. It may not work, but it at least changes them and it keeps their head in the game. And that's the hardest thing in a slow day is to keep your head in the game.
You probably do that for yourself too, right, Bill?
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh man, I do that a lot.
I've gone through days when it's slow and I've changed. And at some point I turn into, I'm tying and changing more than I'm fishing. And so I'm just going to fish what I have on and try to focus.
That word focus keeps coming back up. Matt said it, you're saying it. And that's for me too. It's all about focus. I think the more you focus on one thing, the better it becomes. And then sometimes just changing, we're talking about nymphing a lot, just changing the sighter type or the length, or I'll change my whole leader system. Instead of fishing what I call a standard mono rig, I will fish a micro. Or maybe I'll fish dries, whatever. I'm saying even like within the nymph game, there's so many changes that I can make that will refocus me. And on a dry fly, it's very much the same thing. Instead of just the dry fly, I'll start thinking about, I'm going to work on this curve cast, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Or if I could skitter it without incurring drag right after the skitter. There is something I can change, something that will refocus me. And I think that's what it's all about. For me, it's that focus that keeps me fishing. And whatever brings me back into that hope, that belief, like this will do it. This change is going to do it. That gives me that new hope, that renewed, like you said, Bill, you can do that with your clients. But I do that all the time with myself. Mm-hmm. Whatever it takes to get me refocused.
Right on.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think we've provided so many good options that you can kind of throw in the quiver. Mm. And Dom, I think you alluded to it earlier, but have a plan, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe focus on 3 or 4 of those changes when you go out. Like, all right, if the fishing's slow today, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to run through that, right? And then the next time, if maybe you switch it up a little bit, but at some point, I think we all probably have those handful of things that are our go-tos, right? Yeah, and then when the conditions get really tough, then we have all these other things we pull out to try to crack the code. And so for listeners that are, that's a lot of stuff to potentially incorporate into my game. Start slow, right? And I think there's a lot of good stuff out here that you can slowly work into your game.
There's always something to change. That's one of the reasons we all like fly fishing. We've talked about all the different fly types you can change to, and then within those fishing those dries, you can have multiple different ways you're doing it. Obviously, with the nymphs and the streamers and even wets too. That's why I choose a fly rod. You can do all that stuff, and there's always something that'll give me like a reason to believe something new. And sometimes you just sit on the bank like Josh.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I made it.
Take some pretty pictures.
Yep, that's not a bad.
There you go.
Just don't watch Dom.
Right there. Yeah, don't go watching other anglers. That's something that I'll tell you what. When it's a slow day, but you run into some guy that's up there just whacking fish.
Oh yeah.
What do you do then?
Throw the beer at him.
Yeah.
Pretend that it's not happening.
Just high hole him real close.
What you using?
Yeah, right.
Bunyan bug.
Bunyan bug.
The end of my line.
Bill, you got something?
Yeah, when it's slow, I try to really focus on that first drift and not. So let's say I get into a nice looking spot. Instead of like working my way into that, a lot of times I'll wait a couple extra steps so I know that the first presentation through that run is really good, because maybe there's a couple sloppy casts that would come in if I didn't take my time and wait into position that could spook that fish or displace the fish. Maybe the fish is moving a lot when my fly hits the water because the water's clear and it's turning and coming back to it and it's not eating it, versus if I'm taking my time, waiting in a position, hitting the top of the run, letting it come through. It's a tactic when it's slow that I'll kind of focus on a lot.
That's something I learned from you, Bill. You did an article series on that, when the first cast matters most. We talked about how you think the streamer is really important, like that, with the first cast, wait in position instead of wasting a cast 5 feet below him that might drag him out of there, but then he's not going to eat because he's kind of in bad position, and now he's done. He's not going to look at it twice. Instead of doing that, you're always saying like you'll wade that extra 3 feet or whatever it is and make sure your first cast is the best cast. I agree with you. I think that's even extra important on these slow days. Do you guys agree? Like, many days are slow because the fish are just sensitive, not necessarily because they're hungry, but because the conditions often are making them sensitive. Maybe they're sensitive because Josh said like somebody fished through or maybe even 2 hours ago. They're still a little sensitive.
Do you guys think the most predictable bad fishing, at least for me, is the day after a front comes through?
I can't find that correlation, but tell me what you think.
Let's say a big pressure change. It went from 80 degrees or 70 degrees, and now the high the next day is 50. And usually during those days, huge pressure change, and there's a lot of wind. If I were to predict I'm going to have crappie fishing, I would look at that and say, okay, high of 80, the next day, high of 50. Okay, there's a big swing there. Going to be high winds. I would expect to have crappie fishing that day. And so I know going into it, I know that it's going to be difficult, and I may have to use different tactics than if the weather was consistently the same for like 4 days.
Have you guys picked up on any of like your favorite directions for wind for the majority of our places? Like I've found, and this is one of those things that you get used to looking at for deer hunting, especially with bow hunting. And I've found that, well, for bow hunting, I love any northeasterly wind, so it's blowing down to the southwest, which is usually indicative of a front coming in, specifically a cold front coming in. It's horrible for most of the spots that I like to fish because it pushes the leader the wrong way.
Well, yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I don't know, Bill, I guess if I've had that correlation, but I've also haven't paid close enough attention to that to say one way or another if a front coming through is impactful on the fishing.
Did you chart it, Bill? Did you put it in a spreadsheet?
I haven't put it in a spreadsheet. I just know of many times that I've gone fishing after that front comes through, and it's just, I don't know.
We talked about this on the night fishing series that I charted the barometer for quite a while, 2 years maybe. I just couldn't find a correlation. I thought there were other factors that mattered a lot more, water condition, but especially light conditions, things like that. I would love to have information about that.
I noticed it a lot more in the fall and then like the March time frame, because there'll be those big swings in temperature or with fronts coming in.
Yeah, that's the time of the year where you get those changes. Things aren't as stable.
I think it's gotta. I think like what you were saying, Dom. I think it has to have an impact on the fish too. Sure. I know that maybe it's hard to find the correlation, but if it has such an impact on movement of other animals in the woods, why wouldn't it have an impact on the fish? It's not like water protects them from feeling barometric pressure. I'm assuming, at least.
Right on.
But I think they're always feeling more pressure than we are.
Sure. Well, and I think if you put all those variables into a spreadsheet, the chances of one of them sticking out regularly is probably slim to none.
There's a lot of variables. That's your point, right?
Like, oh yeah, like pressure and fronts. And you could always say, well, it was either the fronts, the pressure, water clarity. Like, it's fun. It's fun to talk about and think about because
shitty angling. That's another.
Yeah. Do you suck? Maybe you just suck.
That
We
might
say
be it.
stepping over
Kinda what I was getting at.
dollars to pick up pennies, right? Like maybe focus on your fishing technique. And
Yeah, I mean, at what point is it? At what point do you look in the mirror and just say, "Yeah, well, maybe I suck"?
That's what I'm saying. Never blame the fish. Always tell yourself you suck. Maybe at the end of the day, on a walkout, you go, "Damn, that was tough." Especially if you got a buddy, and you could kind of trust each other. They're like, "We fished pretty well. We covered a whole bunch of techniques and a whole bunch of water. They just wouldn't eat." Never listen to the people in a parking lot, though.
no,
I've made this point recently to a couple guests of mine. You know, somebody passes, "How was it fishing?" I'm like, "Dude, I never ask people that. I don't care. I don't care how your fishing was because first of all, I don't believe you because you're going to lie. Everybody lies, and they might say that it was bad or it was good. Either way, they're lying to you. I don't care one way or the other. I don't want to know how other people's fishing was unless it's a trusted friend. That throws me off. But anyway, if it's you and your buddy and you can't get anything going, sometimes you say, "All right, I'm not just blaming myself. Sometimes it is the fish." We all have those days, right? I mean, there's just nothing you could seem to get going. You know, you caught one and missed one. That was it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I wonder, you primarily fish the limestone streams, and I think and so I think those stay more stable during those bigger swings.
Pressure swings.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second.
And temperature. No, temperature.
Temperature-wise, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. You didn't mean pressure, because the pressure would affect the limestone streams exactly the same, right, as freestone. Yeah.
I feel like there was an easy answer out there like that, a constant variable. We would know by now. Somebody would have figured it out, and everyone would be going fishing on the same days, and everybody would not be fishing on the same days.
It's almost like that now.
It's just
They
not
go on the sunny days.
Yeah, it's just doesn't work like that.
No. Hey, anything else, guys?
The one other thing I do is if it's tough fishing, I'll relocate if I know the river well to a spot that I know gets very little pressure. And if fishing sucks there, then I'll go to another stream, usually a smaller stream, and fish just like a mountain stream or brook trout stream where there's maybe those fish are more willing. And so,
freebies.
Yeah, I'll go get some freebies.
Mm-hmm. I like to go to the local club and fish for the
pellet time.
Just remind myself what a boss I am at fishing.
And then I hold up that 28-inch rainbow slob, and I go, "Look at that! Look what I did."
Yeah.
Netted it with a 5-gallon net.
Put that straight on Instagram, and then sit on the bank and watch the comments roll in.
That's right.
Tell me how good I am, everyone.
That's what it's really all about.
Then I like to share the comments. I'll screenshot the comments and just post them like the stories section. Look at that. I'm getting.
I like
You
it.
print them
I got
out.
the fish, now I got the accolades. I want to share that too.
Well, that's why we're out there.
Let's go.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Look at me. All right. We done? We good?
All right.
I think we're good.
All right.
Smart ass
We're
Trevor
good.
had to
Wrap it up.
Come on,
I did.
Trevor.
Come on, dude. Come on, man.
Come on.
All right, there it is. How to save the toughest days on the water. Remember, everybody struggles out there. And really, it's those tough times that inspire us to refine our tactics or to tackle the next technique in fly fishing. Because we kind of get the sense that it's always possible to get into a few trout if we can just find the right combination of water type and fly type and match that with a skilled presentation. So while we don't accept failure, we do acknowledge that it's part of the game. Try to keep frustration at bay. Instead, when things aren't working, make a new plan and follow through until that doesn't work either. But keep changing something. Do it often enough to remain hopeful and focused out there. In the end, it always comes down to the same Troutbitten mantra. Fish hard. All right then, Matt Grobe, will you read us out?
Here we go. Remember, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Troutbitten website hosts over 1,000 articles with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and tags too. Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel, now featuring the Troutbitten Tip series, the Fish and Film series, and the Troutbitten Fly Box, all in collaboration with Wilds Media. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a comment, because that really helps. Till next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the water.
Pretty soon the dead drift's going to be dead.
Let's go.
I think it's like 80 or 90%.
Tell me how good I am, everyone.
I want a supernatural fly.
Superfly.
I don't like that.
Austin does that all the time.
They weren't on streamers.
Then I crawl up on the bank and crack that bush light.
Just remind myself what a boss I am at fishing.